Hello there, this is episode 15 for Basil, our King of Thieves for Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition. Last time, Basil and his crew made their way through Cloakwood Forest, and now they're about to assault the Cloakwood Mine Fort. Before we can even make it to the mines, we're forced to fight against a group of bounty hunters that is commonly nicknamed as the Amazons. Regardless of what our level is, this can be a very, very dangerous group, since two of them immediately go into stealth and can backstab for a huge amount of damage, kind of like what Basil does, while the other two are clerics that can control the battlefield. Then again, so can Basil and his crew. The use of a wand of horror and an arrow of biting effectively shuts down this group. Basil is victorious, and the crew loots the enemy. Now that Basil has arrived at the fort, we have a very dangerous group inside the main bailey of the fort, and we're going to have Basil investigate the area around the fort before they make their assault. So we'll pull out the guards across the bridge before we engage in the exploration around the fort. But in the meantime, I'm going to take this video to cover the mods that I've installed and made sure and incorporated into the game to make the game more enjoyable and also a little more challenging at points. First, I've gotten a question a few times about the game speed that I play at. I have the game set to 45 frames per second, or FPS, which can be done through the game files. In order to make this change, you'll need to go into the baldur.ini file as a text editor and find the row that says maximum frame rate, or if you use the find function in your program, just search for frame in order to find this row. Now the standard is set for 30 frames per second, which I found to be a bit slow, but you can adjust it to be a bit higher. Some people boost it all the way up to 60. I don't think that's a good idea. It goes very, very fast at that point. I personally go with 45 frames per second, and I think that makes a nice balance, and it can make the game go very quickly in combat. So you oftentimes find that I have to pause a lot just to get my orders in. Now, before downloading the other mods, you may need to get something called the WeDo program. It's spelled WEIDU program. Now, WeDo is a program used to develop, distribute, and install modifications to games that use the Infinity Engine. The Infinity Engine is what's used in Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2. Many of the following mods use WeDo to install and display the options for these mods. I'm going to have the link to all of these mods, including the WeDo program, in the description below the video. So you can use those in order to kind of guide you through it. I found that it was actually remarkably easy to install, and the files aren't that big, so they're not going to occupy that much space. The second modification that I make is a downloadable file using WeDo called the Sword Coast Stratagems, or SCS. SCS adds a ton of different components, mostly focused around improving enemy behavior and encounter difficulties, but also includes a lot of cosmetic and ease of use components, and also tweaks to different abilities and spells, and incorporates certain Icewind Dale spells into Baldur's Gate. Enemies and companions are also potentially moved around. For example, the group that Basil just defeated, that are nicknamed the Amazons, they normally are right above one of the entrances, or one of the exits to the Nashkel mines, but they're moved to a more random spot to make it more difficult, so that you can't prepare as easily. It increases the difficulty of the game and also makes it a little more organic too. Now, to be honest, on the baby game difficulty that I played this game on, these are minor changes, such as the placement of enemy parties, how casters use spells in combat to give a bit of a challenge to the player. However, on harder difficulties like insane difficulty, these changes can be massive. Mages and clerics will have defensive and buff spells that are cast before combat begins, and will have a ton of spells available to devastate unprepared players. The mod is very customizable too, like a lot of these mods, and it focuses the difficulty on the particular facets of the game, asking you which components of the game you would want to install. For example, if you have a bad experience with enemy mages, you may set their difficulty slightly lower than enemy clerics, and other creatures are impacted too. Spiders are impacted. I'm trying to think of other monsters. I think especially when you get to the variety of monsters in Baldur's Gate 2, you're going to find that those are tweaked as well. The third is a downloadable file called the Tweaks mod, or the Tweaks Anthology. Now again, that's listed below, and it has components of cosmetic changes, house rules, and a ton of other tweaks. Now the cool thing about the Tweaks Anthology is that there are a ton of different options that you can use in your game. So for the tweaks and the SCS mods, if you are installing these on both Baldur's Gates 1 and 2, you'll want to make a copy in both folders and then open both copies through all of the options for both games, so that you'll have the most seamless experience between both games. Now these options are presented in the mod the options presented in the mod aren't universal for both games. Things that, for example, impact just Baldur's Gate 1 aren't going to be in the Baldur's Gate 2 version of it, but most of them you can use will probably have modifications for the same. You want to keep the modifications the same for both games wherever that's possible, which is, I would say, about 80% of the Tweaks Anthology. The fourth is a downloadable mod that I've been using since July called Spell Revisions. These are changes to spell casting that are both cosmetic and fundamental in their scope. Some of the spell changes buff the original spells, and some weaken them. This can change the power behind certain spells and lead to some classes being slightly more or slightly less tanky, or slightly more or less damaging than beforehand. I included a link of it below. Now, I'm still playing around with different facets of the mod. I will say that I like the cosmetic changes to the spells, but the jury is still out on the effectiveness of the changes in the gameplay. The fifth is a downloadable file called NPC Interactions. This mod increases the interactions of your companions in Baldur's Gate 1, since there weren't that many interactions in the original game. There are a few additional options here, but this is mostly a streamlined installation. This installation is pretty much just for Baldur's Gate 1, since Baldur's Gate 2 has many more interactions between companions. I enjoy this mod, even if it feels a little bit out of place sometimes. I like to think it's like giving the character a more vocal player at the table. If you're talking about like comparing it to a TTRPG, right? You're having a more vocal player kind of acting out their role a little more behind the character that they're representing. It's a pretty cool mod. I like it. Finally, I regularly download images and sound sets to use for the characters. You can use any image you have, or you can find online, as long as you have the right sizes of the images to use as portraits. And you'll need to download them into the Portraits folder in the Documents folder of your game. The sound sets can also be downloaded into the Sounds folder in the same location. It's going to require a file for each sound and labeled in a particular way. Now, I have a pair of posts for installing portraits and sound sets linked in the description below. I encourage you to check that out. So I think that's it. I wanted to make it clear. I want to make it clear that these mods were made just for my amusement and my curiosity. Certainly play the game any way you want to. If you want to play it without any mods whatsoever, you can totally get by and do that, and actually you'll have a great experience doing so. I think that these mods give a little bit of a challenge and they shake up the game a bit when I play, especially considering the difficulty and the randomness factors that go into combat. You may or may not want to install these mods. So, check them out, see gameplay played with them, and see if they're anything you want, and give them a try. As for Basil, now it's time to assault the fort. Basil has set a ton of traps. Viconia has a swarm of skeletons summoned, and she's cast various buffs on the entire party. And Dynahair is going to use the Wand of Paralysis on the melee fighter leader. The rest of the party is going to protect themselves and use missile weapons to try to aim for the mages in the back, while the skeletons attack the guys in the front. So with that, let's go.
Why me?
Uh-huh. Okay.
I don't want to talk.
Whatever they need.
Uh-huh.
Go pester someone else.
My blade will...
Sure.
I need an arrow.
For sure!
Okay.
They wish my... As directed.
I care not. I've done had enough of this.
There'll be safety in numbers.
I don't want to
and I
talk.
am 2 or 3 at least.
You're a queer fellow.
Make way, evil! Full plate and packing steel. Go
Okay.
for the eyes, boo! Go for the eyes! Rusk!
They're called.
Go pester someone else.
Go for the eyes, boo! Go for the eyes! Rusk!
For right. And I always am. Whatever they need.
Sure.
Cool one, son.
Uh-huh. Sure. Okay.
And to the prepared goes the victory.
They wish my ear.
And now we head into the motte of the fort, and we take out the last few guards before diving into the mines. The fort is now ours. Next time, we'll move through the mines and actually get to level Basil up. Feel free to check out my content, such as my starter guides and my other playthrough videos. If you like what I do, please leave a comment or a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and good luck. We're all counting on you.